You ever witness someone treat another human being like they were nothing, like they were invisible, disposable, worthless, just because of the uniform they wore or the color of their skin? Well, buckle up because this story is going to take you on a wild ride. It all started on a rainy Thursday evening in downtown Atlanta. The city lights shimmered off the slick sidewalks, people bustled in and out of warm cafes, trying to dodge the wet chill in the air. Inside the upscale Bellamy's Bistro, it was all velvet curtains, low jazz, and the kind of prices that made you hold your breath before looking at the menu. That night, the air was buzzing with quiet conversations and the clinking of wine glasses. And working quietly between the tables, refilling waters, clearing plates, and smiling through it all, was Jamal Davis, a young black man in his late 20s with calm eyes and a quiet, respectful presence. He had just started his shift the same way he always did, nodding politely to the chefs, tying his apron, and checking in with Miss Patricia, the floor manager. Jamal was known by everyone on staff as reliable, thoughtful, and gentle. But tonight, his patience would be pushed to its absolute limit. At table 9, in the middle of the dining room, sat a man who practically dripped arrogance from the moment he walked in. Gregory Langston. White, tall, immaculately dressed in a navy blue custom suit, and the type of guy who talked loud so everyone could hear his important opinions. Gregory was in his early 40s, a real estate mogul who made sure everyone knew it. He arrived with a stunning date on his arm, laughing loudly, snapping at the host for not seating him immediately, and brushing off the maitre d' like he was some kind of insect. From the second Jamal approached the table, Gregory's attitude was ice cold. "Took you long enough," he muttered without looking up from his phone. Jamal smiled politely, standing straight. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Bellamy's. May I start you off with sparkling or still water?" Gregory finally looked up, narrowed his eyes and gave a small, mocking smile. "Let's see, you speak proper English, you're not slouching and you're not chewing gum. They must be hiring better help these days." Jamal's smile didn't fade, but his stomach turned. He was used to microaggressions, people assuming he was less intelligent, less educated, but this man wasn't even subtle. "Still water," Gregory snapped, turning to his date. "And make it fast. I've got business to discuss." Jamal nodded, calmly turning to get their drinks. His hands moved with trained precision, but inside he could feel something building. This wasn't going to be just another difficult customer. As the night went on, Gregory's comments got worse. Every time Jamal came to the table, Gregory found something to criticize. "Do you even know the difference between a Bordeaux and a Pinot Noir?" he sneered when Jamal brought over the wine list. "Did they just throw you in here because they needed a diversity quota?" His date, visibly uncomfortable, tried to redirect the conversation multiple times, but Gregory wasn't having it. He even tossed his napkin on the floor and told Jamal to pick it up, as if he were some kind of servant from the 1800s. Jamal knelt, picked it up silently, and walked away with his head held high. But the straw that broke the camel's back came toward the end of the meal. Gregory leaned back in his chair, swirled his wine glass, and said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "You know what I don't get? How someone like you ends up here, waiting tables in a place you'll never be able to afford. I mean, you're clearly not stupid. You've got manners. But let's be honest, you'll never be anything more than this. A waiter. Maybe if you're lucky, head waiter one day." Jamal froze. A few patrons at nearby tables glanced over. The jazz band seemed to miss a beat. And for a moment, Jamal's calm cracked just a little. He met Gregory's eyes. "Is that all, sir?" he asked, voice tight but steady. Gregory grinned wide like a wolf. "Yeah. That'll be all, boy." Jamal turned and walked away, fire burning behind his eyes. Back in the staff kitchen, he leaned against the counter, breathing deeply. Patricia came over, concerned. "You okay?" she asked. Jamal just nodded. He didn't want to cause trouble. He needed this job. He had plans. He had dreams. But as he stood there, something clicked in his mind. No more tolerating disrespect. No more shrinking. It was time. That night, after his shift ended, Jamal didn't go straight home. He stayed up making phone calls, sending messages, pulling some strings. See, what Gregory didn't know, what no one in that restaurant knew, was that Jamal wasn't just a waiter. Jamal had graduated with honors from Morehouse. He had an MBA. He had spent the last few years working on a tech startup that recently got funded with millions in backing. He'd only been working at Bellamy's temporarily, learning the business from the inside, because he was looking to buy a restaurant chain of his own. And Bellamy's was on the list. For the past 6 months, Jamal had been in secret negotiations to acquire several struggling fine dining properties downtown through a quiet investor group. Bellamy's Bistro had been quietly on the market. And as of 9 a.m. the next morning, the ink was dry. Jamal Davis officially owned the place. The next day, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, Jamal walked back into Bellamy's, not through the service entrance but through the front door. Heads turned. Patricia blinked in shock. "Jamal?" she said. "Is that you?" He smiled. "It's me. We've got a staff meeting today. Can you gather everyone in the lounge?" In the next 20 minutes, Jamal calmly explained the change in ownership, assuring everyone their jobs were secure and that the restaurant would be undergoing some exciting renovations and culture changes. The staff erupted in cheers. Patricia hugged him with tears in her eyes. And just as they finished clapping, the maitre d' came up and whispered, "Sir, table 9 is back. The same man from last night." Jamal's smile froze. "Is that so?" he asked. He straightened his blazer and calmly walked out toward the dining room. And there he was, Gregory Langston, seated at the same table, arms spread wide like he owned the place. His date from the night before was gone, replaced with a business associate this time, and his voice carried across the room like a braying donkey. "I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare. And tell that same black waiter from last night to serve me again. I like to keep my pets consistent." Jamal approached the table slowly, face calm. Gregory didn't look up at first, until he felt the stillness and looked directly into Jamal's eyes. Confusion flickered. "You again?" Gregory said, smirking. "What, did you come in on your day off just to take my order again?" Jamal smiled coldly and sat down in the empty chair across from Gregory, folding his hands. "Actually, no. I'm here to inform you that the waiter you humiliated last night now owns this entire restaurant." Gregory blinked. "Excuse me?" Jamal pulled out the purchase agreement papers from his briefcase, neatly tucked into a leather folder, and placed them on the table between them. "As of this morning, Bellamy's Bistro is under new ownership. Mine." For a moment, Gregory was silent. Then he let out a laugh. "You're kidding. You expect me to believe a guy like you? A guy like me?" Jamal asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean a black man? A waiter? Someone you thought was beneath you?" Gregory stammered. "No, I just meant, this has to be a joke." Jamal stood. "No joke. In fact, I came over here to ask you to leave. Not just today. Permanently. You're banned. From this location and from every restaurant under my group's ownership. Racism isn't welcome here." The room had gone quiet. Staff members stood at the edges watching. Patrons stared, jaws dropped. Gregory stood too, furious. "You can't ban me. I'll ruin you. I have connections." Jamal didn't flinch. "And I have dignity. Which is something money clearly hasn't bought you." Gregory's face flushed red as he grabbed his coat and stormed toward the exit, muttering threats under his breath. Just before reaching the door, he spun around. "You'll regret this, boy." And that's when Jamal said something no one expected. He said, "Actually, there's something else you should know. I looked into your company last night. And let's just say, tomorrow, I'm not just buying your favorite restaurant. I'm coming for your building too." Gregory froze. "What the hell are you talking about?" he spat. Jamal's eyes gleamed. "Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths." Gregory Langston stood frozen in the middle of Bellamy's Bistro, the same space where just 24 hours earlier he mocked and humiliated a young black waiter for simply doing his job. But today the energy in the room had shifted. The man he insulted, Jamal Davis, was no longer wearing an apron. He was standing in a tailored suit, ownership documents in hand, confidence radiating from his calm posture. Gregory's face was a twisted mess of disbelief and rage. "What did you just say to me?" he demanded, his voice now loud enough to make customers put down their forks. Jamal didn't flinch. He stepped closer, locked eyes with the man who tried to humiliate him, and repeated with precision, "I looked into your company last night. Langston Properties, right? Your name's on the building this restaurant leases. But here's the thing, you're behind on your mortgage payments. 3 months to be exact. Your loan is in distress." Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jamal pressed on. "And that prime property you own? The one you brag about in every room? You might not know this, but the bank listed it for private bid through a subsidiary. Funny how information moves when you know where to look. He leaned in just a little. I've already made an offer. My legal team is finalizing it today. If it closes, I'll own this restaurant, and the building you used to flex your wealth. Gasps rippled through the dining room like thunder after lightning. Even Patricia, standing at the edge of the kitchen, covered her mouth in disbelief. Jamal straightened up and added, "Now unless you'd like dessert served with a side of public shame, I suggest you leave." Gregory's face turned crimson. "You little," he began, but Jamal held up a hand. "Before you finish that sentence and humiliate yourself further, I suggest you do what men of character do when they're beat. Walk away." Gregory looked around. Every eye in the restaurant was locked on him. His bravado drained from his body like air from a balloon. With a final growl of frustration, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the restaurant, nearly knocking over a coat stand on his way out. As the door slammed behind him, the room erupted, not in chaos but in quiet, stunned admiration. Slowly the staff began to clap. Then a few customers joined in. Soon the entire dining room was applauding the quiet strength Jamal had displayed, his face still calm but now showing the faintest smile. Patricia walked over and hugged him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." Jamal nodded. This is just the beginning. What most people didn't know was that Jamal had been preparing for this moment for years. After graduating Morehouse at the top of his class, he worked quietly behind the scenes, investing, learning, growing his startup and real estate portfolio with surgical precision. He'd been mocked, underestimated, turned down by banks, landlords, even mentors who claimed he didn't look like a CEO. But through it all, Jamal remained patient, calculating, driven. And now, not only had he turned the tables on a man who disrespected him, he was building a foundation for something even bigger. The next morning, Jamal's legal team confirmed the building purchase had gone through. Gregory's building, now Jamal's. It sent shockwaves through downtown business circles. Whispers of the black waiter who bought the restaurant and the building began to echo through every cafe and boardroom. But Jamal wasn't interested in being a local legend. He had more pressing matters. He began scheduling meetings with staff, not just from Bellamy's, but from 3 other restaurants he'd recently acquired. His vision? To create the first Black-owned fine dining restaurant group in Atlanta with a focus on community, respect, and legacy. He implemented staff development programs, scholarships for line cooks and wait staff, and a zero-tolerance policy for racism, microaggressions, and elitist entitlement. He didn't just want a seat at the table. He wanted to build the whole dining room from the ground up. Meanwhile, Gregory was unraveling. The media caught wind of what happened. Local news stations began digging into Langston Properties and their failing assets. Then someone leaked a clip from Bellamy's, security footage of Gregory's diversity quota comment. It went viral. Sponsors pulled out. A few of Gregory's business partners issued public statements distancing themselves. And then, almost as if fate had written the script herself, it happened. Jamal was walking out of one of his restaurants when he noticed a man sitting alone on the sidewalk, head in his hands. The suit was wrinkled, the hair disheveled. And even in his pitiful state, Jamal recognized him. Gregory Langston. For a moment, Jamal considered walking past. After all, this man had tried to destroy him, humiliate him, insult his intelligence and his blackness. But instead Jamal stopped. "Rough day?" he asked. Gregory looked up, eyes bleary. "You," he muttered. "You ruined me." Jamal shook his head. "No, Gregory. You did that to yourself. I just stopped letting you get away with it." Gregory scoffed. "So what now? You come here to gloat?" Jamal thought for a second. "No. I came to ask if you've learned anything." Gregory looked away. "Yeah," he said bitterly. "That the world isn't fair. People like me aren't allowed to mess up." Jamal tilted his head. "No. What you should have learned is that people like me, people you look down on, are stronger than you think. We rise. We endure. And when we succeed, we don't need to crush others to prove a point." He turned to walk away, then paused. "But if you're ready to start over, I might have a position open. Not as a manager. Not even as a server. But something real. Something honest. Everyone deserves a second chance, even the ones who never gave one to others." Gregory didn't answer. He just stared, broken, humbled. Jamal walked away without looking back. 2 weeks passed. Bellamy's was thriving under its new leadership. The energy had changed. The staff walked taller. The customers were more diverse. The food had soul. And Jamal? He was already looking at the next acquisition. That's when the call came. One of Jamal's friends in city planning rang him late one evening. "Hey man, you got a minute? You're not gonna believe what I just found out." Jamal leaned back in his chair. "Hit me." "It's about Gregory Langston. Word is he's not done. He's been meeting with some shady investors, people from out of state. They're planning something big. Something that might put everything you've built at risk." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "They're trying to buy up half the block. They want to turn it into a luxury condo district. Price out all the small businesses. Yours included." "And Gregory?" "He's fronting like he's the one who still owns everything." Jamal's blood ran cold. "You're sure?" "Positive. The papers are already being drawn. And they've already got their eye on your next property." Jamal stood, heart racing. "Send me everything. Now." Because just when Jamal thought he had closed the chapter on Gregory Langston, he realized the man wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And what came next would force Jamal to fight harder than ever before, not just for a building or a business but for the soul of an entire community. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. Power is not always loud. It's not always the person shouting orders or flaunting their money. Sometimes power is quiet, strategic, patient. Jamal Davis had learned that truth the hard way. For years he'd been overlooked, disrespected, written off as just a waiter. But now he stood at the center of one of the fastest-growing restaurant groups in Atlanta, Black-owned, community-powered, and built on a foundation of pride and perseverance. But with great success often comes great resistance. And in Jamal's case, that resistance came in the form of Gregory Langston, a man who had once mocked him to his face and now, even after being exposed, was crawling back from the shadows with a vengeance. When Jamal received the call from his city planner friend, the news felt like a slap in the face. Gregory, the same man who had been disgraced, bankrupt, and abandoned by his business partners, was somehow bouncing back with a new scheme. This time it wasn't just personal, it was political. It was economic. It was war. Gregory had partnered with a group of wealthy, out-of-state developers, most of whom didn't care one bit about the local community. Their plan? Buy up half the block where Jamal's restaurants and several other minority-owned businesses sat. Bulldoze them. Replace them with towering glass condos and exclusive retail shops. The plan had a name, the Jefferson Redevelopment Project, and it was moving fast, under the radar, hidden behind legal loopholes and slick PR. Jamal immediately called an emergency meeting with his executive team, legal counsel, and community liaisons. "If this goes through," he told them, pacing the room, "we don't just lose our restaurants, we lose our roots, our identity. They're trying to erase us." His head of legal, a sharp Black woman named Ayanna, laid out the details. "They've filed for zoning changes. If they get those approved by the city council, they can legally begin displacing tenants. Eminent domain could follow if they play their cards right. And the worst part," added Marcus, Jamal's longtime friend and business partner, "they're disguising it as a revitalization effort. Talking about how they're bringing jobs and modern housing. But we know what that really means, gentrification, plain and simple." Jamal stood silent for a moment, then said firmly, "We fight back. Not with protests alone. Not just online. We take this to the people. To the press. To the council chambers. We make noise the right way." Over the next few days, Jamal and his team launched a strategic, citywide counter-campaign. They called it #OurBlockOurRoots. Local barbershops, food trucks, hair salons, bookstores, and historic churches joined the movement. Flyers went up. Podcasts picked up the story. A viral video showing Jamal walking through the very block Gregory wanted to destroy, with captions about Black ownership and legacy, racked up millions of views in 48 hours. But while Jamal was organizing, Gregory was scheming. Deep inside his new high-rise office suite, funded by his new partners, shady investment developers from Florida and New York, Gregory was plotting how to silence Jamal's movement before it gained more traction. "That kid's smarter than we thought," said one of the developers during a private meeting. "If we let this narrative take hold, it could kill public support." Gregory narrowed his eyes. Then we hit him where it hurts. Discredit him. Ruin his name. Make the city think he's just another grifter playing the race card for sympathy. And just like that, the smear campaign began. Fake stories began circulating online. Articles accusing Jamal of tax fraud, hiring undocumented workers, falsifying his business degrees. News stations began receiving anonymous tips. Old photos were taken out of context. Even a video of Jamal arguing with a health inspector, who had actually been bribed by Gregory, surfaced on a gossip blog, edited to make Jamal look like the aggressor. It was a coordinated attack. And it hurt. Badly. Within days, 2 of Jamal's investors pulled out, fearing brand risk. A city council member who had previously pledged support backed off publicly. Online, trolls flooded his business pages with fake reviews. One of Jamal's restaurants was even vandalized with graffiti reading, "Liar. Not one of us." But Jamal didn't back down. He faced the cameras head-on, calmly denying the allegations, presenting his clean tax records, his verified degrees and testimonies from hundreds of satisfied employees. He used every smear against him as fuel. "You tried to destroy me once," he said in a viral video response, looking directly into the lens, "but you didn't realize I was forged in fire. Your lies don't scare me. My community knows who I am. And we're not going anywhere." The tide slowly began turning again. Prominent voices, Black pastors, city historians, educators, even celebrities, began voicing their support. Jamal was invited to speak on national talk shows, featured in a documentary, and honored by a local civil rights organization. But he knew the real battle wasn't in front of cameras. It was in the city council meeting scheduled for the following week, the one where the zoning changes would be voted on. If Gregory's group won that vote, it was game over. Jamal pulled together a town hall, inviting local residents, business owners, and allies to prepare for the hearing. The energy was electric. Young and old, black and brown, united under one cause. Jamal stood on stage and said, "They want to build over our stories. But we're not just buildings, they're trying to bulldoze our history, our culture, our future. We're going to that hearing and we're going to show them that this community is not for sale." The night before the vote, Jamal received a message from an anonymous number. It simply read, "Meet me at 11 p.m. behind the old Plaza Theater. Come alone. You need to hear this." Jamal hesitated. Could it be a trap? A threat? But something in his gut said go. He drove alone, parked near the empty theater, and stepped out into the quiet night air. A hooded figure stepped from the shadows. "Are you Jamal Davis?" "Depends who's asking." The figure pulled back his hood. It was a white man in his late 50s, grizzled, nervous. "My name's Thomas Hargrove. I used to work for Gregory Langston. I was his personal accountant. And what I'm about to show you, it's going to change everything." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "Go on." The man handed over a USB flash drive. "On here are files, emails, payments, bribes, illegal zoning influence. Everything. Proof that Gregory's been breaking the law to push this project through. He paid off 3 city council members, forced out 2 tenants illegally. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. They always say if you're going to come for a king, you better not miss." But Gregory Langston had done just that. First, he tried to humiliate Jamal Davis in front of an entire restaurant. Then, when that failed and Jamal turned out to be the owner of not just the restaurant but the entire building, Gregory came back with bigger, darker plans. And now, with the Jefferson redevelopment project threatening to wipe out Jamal's entire block, his businesses, his legacy, his community, he thought he had the upper hand again. But what Gregory didn't expect was that one of his own, a man named Thomas Hargrove, his personal accountant for over a decade, was about to flip the entire game. That night behind the Plaza Theater, under the dim yellow glow of a busted street lamp, Thomas handed Jamal a small USB flash drive. "This," Thomas said, his voice shaking, "contains everything. Every illegal transaction, every bribe, every shell company. Gregory's been laundering money through offshore accounts, paying off city council members, and forcing longtime residents out of their leases. And worse, he's planning to set fire to one of the vacant properties to claim insurance and speed up the demolition process." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. "He's planning arson?" "Yes," Thomas said. "It's all there. Emails. Drafted plans. Even a hired contractor under a fake name. The fire is set for tomorrow night. You need to stop this before it happens. Jamal stared at the drive in his hand, his mind racing. Why are you doing this now? He asked. Because I've watched him destroy people for years. But what he's doing to you, it's different. You built something real. You gave people hope. And I couldn't stay silent anymore. With that, Thomas disappeared into the shadows, leaving Jamal with the flash drive and a racing heart. The next morning, Jamal didn't waste a second. He contacted Ayanna, his lawyer, and within hours they had a private meeting with a district attorney. Ayanna presented the digital evidence, connecting names, timelines, and payments. The DA's eyes widened with every screen scroll. If this is real, she said, Langston's not just going to lose the project, he's going to prison. It is real, Jamal said. And he's planning to burn down a building tomorrow night. The DA nodded gravely. We'll set up a sting operation. But we need to move carefully. If we spook him, he'll disappear. Let us handle this quietly. Tomorrow night we catch him in the act. That evening, Jamal met with his team to prepare for the final city council vote scheduled for the following day. The vote that could make or break the Jefferson Project, and his community's future. We show up strong, he told the staff, volunteers, local business owners, and community leaders packed into the back room of Bellamy's Bistro. No yelling. No chaos. Just unity. We speak our truth. We show them what we've built. We remind them who this city really belongs to. He paused, scanning the crowd. But while we're doing that, just know that justice is moving behind the scenes. Gregory thinks he's untouchable. He's not. The next day, the city council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Media crews lined the back walls. Protesters and supporters stood shoulder to shoulder, wearing #OurBlockOurRoots shirts and buttons. On one side sat Gregory Langston in a sleek gray suit, fake smile plastered on his face, flanked by his lawyers and investors. On the other side sat Jamal, calm and focused, surrounded by elders, small business owners, and students from the community. The council hearing began. One by one, voices from the community stepped up to the mic. A pastor from the local AME church. A grandmother who had lived on Jefferson Avenue for 42 years. A young poet who performed at Jamal's open mic nights. A former dishwasher who was now a manager at one of Jamal's restaurants. Each person told their truth, about the soul of the neighborhood, the history behind those buildings, and the danger of letting greed replace roots. Jamal stood last. This isn't just about buildings, he said, voice echoing through the chamber. It's about the people inside them. You can't put a price on a neighborhood spirit. We've built more than restaurants. We've built opportunity, stability, legacy. And I ask you, are we going to let that be erased for condos none of us can afford? The crowd erupted in applause. Council members exchanged glances, some visibly moved. But just as the hearing was about to close, Gregory Langston rose from his seat and walked slowly to the microphone. He smiled. I admire Mr. Davis's passion, he said, oozing false humility. But let's not confuse sentiment with progress. This project brings jobs, revenue, and modernization. Atlanta deserves to compete on a global scale. And sometimes that means letting go of the past. Jamal narrowed his eyes. The room fell into a tense silence. Gregory looked directly at Jamal and added, We can't let emotion stop evolution. As the council began deliberating, a sudden flurry of whispers moved through the chamber. A police officer entered from the back, whispered something into the DA's ear, and she immediately stood up and approached the panel. Excuse me, Chairwoman, she said. There's been a development that directly impacts this vote. The chairwoman nodded, and the DA turned to the room. We have evidence of criminal activity involving Mr. Gregory Langston and the Jefferson Redevelopment Project. A formal investigation has been launched. Until it concludes, the vote will be postponed and the project is hereby suspended. The room erupted. Some gasped. Others cheered. Gregory stood stunned, his mouth slightly open. What is this? What kind of game are you playing? The DA responded calmly, No game. Just justice. But what no one knew, what even Jamal hadn't expected, was that Gregory had one last card up his sleeve. That night, as Jamal returned to his apartment, exhausted but hopeful, he found a small envelope taped to his door. No name. No return address. Just a wax seal. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph of Jamal's younger brother, Deshaun, bound and gagged in the back seat of a car. The note beneath it read, "You think you won. But this isn't over. Play your next move carefully, or you'll lose everything." Jamal dropped the envelope, hands trembling. The war wasn't over. It had just turned deadly. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The envelope hit the ground with a soft thud, but the noise it made inside Jamal's chest was deafening. That photo, his baby brother Deshaun bound and gagged in the backseat of a car, wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. After everything Jamal had built, everything he'd fought for, the restaurants, the community movement, the legal takedown of Gregory Langston, this felt like the final line Gregory was willing to cross. Jamal's hands trembled as he picked up the picture and note again. "You think you won. But this isn't over. Play your next move carefully, or you'll lose everything." It was no longer about buildings or contracts or media headlines. This was personal. This was evil. Jamal immediately called the police and handed over the envelope. The officer on duty promised to escalate it to the Special Investigations Unit, but Jamal knew how long the system could take when the victim was Black and the suspect was wealthy. He didn't have time. He needed to act fast. He called Marcus and Ayanna to a late-night meeting at his restaurant office. "Gregory kidnapped my brother," Jamal said, voice low but deadly calm. "He sent me a picture. If we wait on law enforcement, Deshaun might not make it." Ayanna's jaw tightened. "That's a federal crime. He's crossing into dangerous territory now." Marcus leaned forward. "Do we know where they might have taken him?" "Not yet. But I've got a theory." Jamal pulled out a set of documents from the Jefferson Project deal. "There's a foreclosed warehouse on Auburn Avenue. Gregory listed it under a dummy company, but it's connected to one of the shell businesses Thomas exposed on the flash drive. It's been abandoned for months, no utilities, off-grid. If I were him, that's where I'd hide someone." "We're coming with you," Marcus said, standing up. "You're not going alone." "This could get ugly," Jamal warned. "Then we get ready to get ugly," Ayanna replied, pulling her licensed concealed carry from her purse and checking the safety. Jamal nodded. "Let's go get my brother." Under the cover of darkness, Jamal, Marcus, and Ayanna drove to the warehouse. Jamal's stomach churned as they parked across the street. The building was cold, looming, and silent. But a faint light flickered inside. They approached with caution, flashlights off, hearts pounding. Jamal picked the side entrance lock with surprising ease. He'd learned a few tricks growing up in the South Side before he found his calling. Inside it was dusty, littered with old equipment, wooden crates, and broken furniture. And then Jamal heard it. A muffled sound. He rushed toward it. In the far corner of the warehouse, inside a small makeshift room, was Deshaun, tied to a chair, duct tape across his mouth, fear in his eyes. Jamal lunged forward, tearing the tape off gently and untying the ropes. "You're safe now," Jamal whispered, hugging him tightly. "You're okay." But the moment was cut short, because from the shadows stepped Gregory Langston, flanked by two large men in black coats. One of them had a bat. The other had a knife. Gregory clapped slowly. "Bravo, Jamal. I knew you'd come. Loyalty always makes smart men stupid." Jamal stood protectively in front of his brother. "Let him go, Gregory. This ends now." Gregory smiled coldly. "You don't get it, do you? I tried to beat you in business, in politics, in the media. You kept coming back. You humiliated me. You made me look weak. I have nothing left to lose. But you have everything." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "And that's exactly why you'll never win. Because you fight from hate. I fight from purpose." The two men advanced. Before they could take another step, Ayanna fired a warning shot into the ceiling. "Try me," she growled. "I'm licensed. And I'm not in the mood." The men paused. Gregory, now realizing he was losing control, shouted, "You think this changes anything? I've got deals lined up across this city. I'll tear every one of your buildings down if I have to. I'll rebuild this block in my image." Jamal walked slowly toward him, fearless. "You already lost, Gregory. You don't build. You destroy. That's why your world is crumbling. Mine is just beginning." Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights lit up the warehouse windows. Sirens. Dozens of cops stormed the building, guns drawn. "Police, drop your weapons." Turns out, Marcus had texted a location ping to the lead investigator minutes before entering the warehouse. Within seconds, Gregory's men were handcuffed, disarmed, and shoved to the floor. Gregory tried to run but was tackled mid-sprint by 2 officers. They read him his rights as he screamed, "This isn't over. I made this city. You'll regret this." But Jamal just stood there, holding his brother, watching calmly as justice was finally served. The next morning, headlines across Atlanta, and eventually the country, read, "Wealthy developer arrested in kidnapping, arson plot against black entrepreneur." Gregory Langston was charged with kidnapping, conspiracy to commit arson, bribery, money laundering, and racketeering. The city council held an emergency meeting and officially terminated the Jefferson redevelopment project. Every council member who took bribes resigned or was indicted. In the weeks that followed, Jamal was flooded with interviews, community awards, and even a state commendation for his courage. But he didn't let it distract him. He got back to work. His restaurant group expanded. He launched a nonprofit called Rise and Restore, dedicated to protecting black neighborhoods from predatory developers. He set up scholarship programs, bought up more buildings, trained youth in culinary arts, tech, and business. And every time he walked through Bellamy's Bistro, the same place where he was once mocked as just a waiter, he smiled. Because now it wasn't just a restaurant. It was a reminder. That dignity can't be taken. That grace is stronger than ego. That silence doesn't mean weakness. And that no matter how loud the hate gets, purpose will always speak louder in the end. Never underestimate someone because of the uniform they wear or the place they start. A waiter can be a future CEO. A servant can become a leader. A humble man with vision, character, and resilience is more powerful than any man with a loud voice and an empty soul. Hate might win a few battles, but love, with purpose, strategy, and community, wins the war. What Gregory built on fear collapsed. What Jamal built on faith and focus became a legacy. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths.